You don't always say it out loud, but you feel it, that quiet sense that God might be disappointed in you. Not angry, not distant, just disappointed, like he expected more, like you should be further by now, stronger by now, more consistent by now. And the hardest part? You can't even point to one big failure. It's not just one moment, it's the pattern. The same struggle again, the same inconsistency again, the same habits you thought you had moved past, coming back. So you try to do better. You recommit, you reset, you push yourself. And for a little while, it feels like you're back on track. But then it happens again. And that quiet thought returns, God must be tired of this. And once that thought gets in, it changes how you relate to him. You still pray, but it feels different. Less open. Less honest. More careful. You choose your words. You hold certain things back. You try not to sound like you're failing again, because deep down, you don't want to disappoint him more. What if that entire feeling is built on something that isn't true? What if the version of God you're reacting to is not who he actually is? Because hidden inside that feeling of disappointment is an assumption that God relates to you based on your consistency, that his posture toward you shifts with your performance, that when you're doing well, he's pleased, and when you're not, he pulls back. And it makes sense why you'd think that, because that's how most relationships work. Approval when you do well, disappointment when you don't. So without realizing it, you project that same pattern onto God. You're not just feeling disappointed in yourself. You're assuming God feels the same way. Let that land. Because this is where everything starts to shift. Your experience with God is shaped by how you think he sees you. And if you believe he's disappointed, you won't come to him freely. You'll come carefully, guarded, measured, and that creates distance. Not because God moved, but because you did. Now let's go deeper. Why does it feel so real? Because it's not random. It's learned. At some point, you connected love with performance, approval with doing well, value with consistency. Maybe from people, maybe from systems, maybe from your own expectations. But the message was clear. Do well and you're accepted. Fail and something changes. Even in your relationship with God. So now when you struggle, it doesn't just feel like a mistake. It feels like a letdown, not just to yourself, but to him. And that creates pressure, because now your focus is not connection. It's not knowing him. It's not being with him. It's trying not to disappoint him. And that changes everything, because now your faith becomes careful, controlled, less honest. You hide certain things. You filter what you say. You manage how you show up, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about getting it right. When your focus becomes not disappointing God, you stop relating to him honestly. Without honesty, there is no real connection. Now here's the deeper issue. When you believe God is disappointed in you, you start pulling back, not dramatically, subtly. You delay prayer. You avoid certain conversations with him. You keep things surface level, because something in you feels like, I'll come back when I'm doing better. And that right there is the trap. Because the moment you pull back, you lose the very connection that actually helps you change. So the cycle continues. Struggle. Feel like you disappointed God. Pull back. Feel more distant. Struggle again. You don't stay stuck because God is disappointed in you. You stay stuck because you believe he is. Let that sit. Because this is the turning point. The problem is not God's posture. It's your perception of it. You're relating to a version of God that shifts with your performance. But what if that's not true? What if God's posture toward you is more stable than you think, more consistent than your behavior, more grounded than your emotions? What if he's not watching you with quiet disappointment, but with something completely different? And if that's true, it changes everything. Because now, you don't have to clean yourself up first. You don't have to improve before you come. You don't have to hide when you struggle. You can come as you are. even in the middle of it. Especially then. And that's what we're going to unpack next. What God's posture toward you actually is, why it doesn't shift the way you think it does, and why understanding that is the key to finally breaking the cycle. Because once you see this clearly, you stop holding back, and you start coming to Him differently. So what is God's posture toward you really? Not what you've assumed, not what you felt in your worst moments, but what's actually true. Because if that's wrong, everything else will feel off. Most people imagine God watching them with a kind of quiet evaluation, not rejecting, not projecting, tracking, measuring, like He's paying attention to how consistent you are, how disciplined you are, how much progress you're making. And when you do well, He's pleased. But when you don't, something in His posture shifts, maybe not fully away, but slightly, less close, less warm, less open. That picture feels real, but it's not accurate. Because it's built on a human framework, not a relational one. God is not tracking your performance to decide how He feels about you. Let that land, because this is where the distortion breaks. God's posture toward you is not fluctuating with your behavior. It's anchored, stable, consistent, even when you're not. Now, this is where it challenges you. Because if that's true, then your worst moments don't push Him away. They actually reveal how He responds when you're not at your best. And that response is not what you expect. Because instead of distance, there's invitation. Instead of disappointment, there's patience. Instead of pulling back, there's openness. Not because your struggle doesn't matter, but because your relationship was never built on your perfection. God's response to your weakness is not distance, it's invitation. Let that sit. Because this changes how you approach everything. It means your struggle is not the moment God steps back. It's the moment He invites you closer. But here's why that feels hard to believe. Because your mind is trained differently. It's trained to associate failure with withdrawal, to associate mistakes with distance, to assume, if I mess up, something changes. And that pattern runs deep. So even when you hear the truth, your instinct resists it. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. Now let's go deeper. If God is not relating to you through disappointment, then what are you actually feeling? Because the feeling is real. That weight, that pressure, that sense of I should be better by now. That's not imaginary. But it's not coming from Him. It's coming from you. More specifically, from how you see yourself. What you're calling God's disappointment is often your own self-judgment projected onto Him. Let that land. Because this is the hidden layer. You're not reacting to God's actual posture. You're reacting to your perception of yourself. When you feel like you're falling short, you assume He sees you the same way. When you feel frustrated with your growth, you assume He feels frustrated too. When you feel tired of your inconsistency, you assume He's tired of it as well. And without realizing it, you turn your inner voice into His voice. And that's why it feels so real. Because it's coming from inside you, not from Him. Now bring this together. This is the cycle, struggle, self-judgment, have assumed God feels the same, pull back, feel distant, struggle again. And the more you stay in it, the more convincing it becomes. But the foundation is wrong, because it starts with a distorted view of God. God is not relating to you through disappointment. He's relating to you through invitation. That's the shift from assumption to truth, from projection to reality, from distance to connection. But here's the challenge. Letting go of that old belief feels uncomfortable. Because now you can't hide behind improvement. You can't delay connection until you're better. You can't manage the relationship through performance. You have to come as you are, and that feels vulnerable, even exposed. But that's where real connection begins, not when you're fixed, but when you're honest. So, in the next part, we're going to make this real. How do you actually come to God when you feel like you've messed up? What does it look like to stop pulling back and start leaning in? And how do you rebuild a relationship that isn't based on performance, but on truth? Because once you live this out, everything changes. Not because you become perfect, but because you finally stop hiding, So now this is where everything becomes real. Not when you understand the idea, but when you respond differently in the moment you feel like you failed. Because that's the moment that defines everything. Not when you're doing well, but when you're not. That's where your view of God actually shows up. So what do you do when that familiar feeling hits? That weight, that frustration, that quiet thought, I should be better than this. Here are 5 simple shifts that change everything. Storshk switch 1. From pulling back, leaning in. Your instinct will always be to withdraw, to wait, to fix it first, to come back later. But instead, you move toward God immediately. Not after you improve. Right there. Asterisk, real life. Asterisk, instead of thinking, I'll pray when I get this under control. You say, I'm coming to you like this. That one decision breaks the cycle. Stwish 2. From hiding, honesty ashed. You stop filtering what you bring. You stop trying to sound better than you are. And you tell the truth, not polished, not spiritual, real. Asterisk, real life. Asterisk, I'm frustrated. I don't understand why I keep doing this. I feel stuck. You don't get closer to God by sounding better. You get closer by being honest. You get land. Switch 3. From self-judgment and awareness, you stop attacking yourself internally, and you simply notice what's actually happening. Without adding shame, without adding pressure. Asterisk, real life. Instead of, why am I like this? You shift to, this is where I am right now. And that small shift creates space. Space to breathe. Space to respond differently. Asterisk, switch 4. From fixing first, you're receiving first, you stop trying to repair yourself before you come close. And you allow yourself to receive first. Connection. Grace, presence. Asterisk, real life. Instead of thinking, I need to get this right first, you shift to, I'm allowed to come close even here. You don't fix yourself to be close to God. You come close to be changed, and that removes pressure. Stoshrik switch 5. From earning, relationship. This is the deepest shift. You stop treating your relationship with God like something you maintain through performance, and you start relating to Him as someone who is already there. Consistently. Unchanging. Asterisk, real life. You stop asking, have I done enough to come back? And you start realizing, I was never pushed away. You're not rebuilding a broken relationship with God, you're returning to one that never left. Let that sit, because this is where the weight lifts. Now zoom out. When you start living like this, something begins to shift. Not instantly, but deeply. The fear of disappointing God starts to lose its hold. The pressure to perform begins to fade. And the distance you used to feel starts to close. Not because you became better, but because you stopped pulling away. You begin to come to God more quickly after you struggle. Feel less internal pressure to get it right. Experience more honesty in your relationship. Feel closer, even when you're not at your best. And that changes everything. Here's the truth you need to hear clearly. God is not waiting for you to stop disappointing Him, because that's not how He sees you. He's inviting you to stop running from Him, because He hasn't moved, not once. You're not one step away from losing God's closeness. You're one step away from returning to it. Right now. Even here. Especially here. If this message spoke to you, do one thing right now. Go down to the comments and type, I'm coming back honestly. Not as a feeling, as a decision. And if you know someone who feels like they keep disappointing God, share this with them, because they don't need more pressure. They need to know they're not as far as they think. If you want more honest, freeing, life-changing truth, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because you don't have to live in fear of disappointing God. You can live in real connection. I'll see you in the next one.